Let's talk about confronting hesitation. And in a moment, I'm going to give you key questions to ask, but realize that confronting hesitation is going to be very powerful for your clients. You're going to allow them to push through all kinds of things that they normally wouldn't have. And when you get into hesitation, realize that you're really getting at something much deeper, something much bigger, a much bigger picture for them, which is the reason that they are hesitating. So when you start to open up the conversation about hesitation, and it's not going to be appropriate for all clients. Some of them you're not going to want to get into this conversation with. You're just going to want to work around it in other ways. And you'll be able to figure out which ones to work with and which ones to work behind the scenes with. However, when you get into this, you get into something that's so powerful for them, because hesitation causes a lot of opportunities to be missed forever. And that split-second hesitation can be throwing them off. Now, I want you to realize that hesitation is something that may not really be a challenge for them. You may be looking at them hesitating in certain situations, not realizing that they know something that you don't. That they know that if they hesitate, actually what's going to happen is the person's going to come back with a better offer. So you may want to check your facts before you pinpoint it as a challenge to work on. It may be something that you need to learn more about in terms of their particular business. However, hesitation, if you see it stopping them in many cases or crippling their efforts, then you will want to have a way of dealing with it. And when you deal with it, rather than just walking up to them and saying, hey, why did you hesitate there? I want you to have a way to go deeper than that, to get a deeper meaning than that, because what you're going to get into, if they're open for the conversation, is something that is more universally applicable to their lives. It's going to be something that they can carry over into everything that they do. So with a series of appropriate and focused questions, you are going to find that you are able to help them not just with hesitation, but with a lot of things. And you're also going to find that the hesitation, if you ask the right questions, the hesitation can tend to clear itself up. Sometimes just by getting an understanding of what's going on in their lives, they are able to move forward more easily. So the first question that you can ask is, what is causing you to hesitate? Now, keep in mind, usually clients are unaware of what's really causing them to hesitate. Maybe they're hesitating because when they were 5, they tried to do something, and Aunt so-and-so yelled at them, so they've never really tried to do anything big since then. Maybe that's the real reason. But it's unlikely that they're going to tell you that. It's unlikely they're going to say, oh, yeah, well, because Aunt so-and-so yelled at me when I was at my formative point in my life, and she's really shut down my decision-making process because I've doubted myself since then, and everything I've ever done in my life has been a series of things that aren't really quite what I want to do because I feel that I'm going to be shut down by this subconscious image of Aunt so-and-so that I carry around with me. And I was wondering if you could help me with that, by the way. They're probably not going to give you an answer like that. They're probably going to say, well, I don't know. Or more likely, they're going to give you what sounds like a logical answer. It's going to sound like something that makes a lot of sense in that moment. Well, I hesitated because all of the facts and figures weren't in. And then you look at the paperwork and you see that all the facts and figures were in, or enough of them were in to make a decision. And so this can easily turn into an argument. I want you to realize how blind sometimes your clients will be to what's really going on in their own lives, and I want you to respect that. Rather than probing, knowing that there's something deeper and they're just not aware of it and you can help them if you keep probing, rather than doing that, unless they're up for it, which they usually won't be, rather than doing that, I just want you to make a mental note that this is something that they need to work on. Now, if you get to the point where you feel that they need professional help, a psychologist or psychiatrist, hypnotherapist, anything like that, I want you to realize before you talk to them what you're going to be perceived as when you say this. You're going to be perceived as someone who's telling them they've got a problem. People don't like to hear that. They don't like to hear they've got a problem because that sounds like you're telling me I'm bad. That sounds like you're saying that there's something wrong with me when you say you should do this or you should do that, when you're recommending some kind of professional help. Nobody likes hearing that. I wouldn't like hearing it. I doubt you would like hearing it. Your client's probably not going to like hearing it. So sometimes that's completely out of the question and something that could actually cause you to lose your job, especially if you say it in the wrong way. You need help. You need professional help. Okay, so realize that they're probably not going to be aware of it. They're probably not going to be open to professional help. It's going to be your job to somehow work with it, work around it, or through a series of interactions, make it more apparent to them what's really going on. Another great question to ask, which may or may not get you the information you need, but it may at least show you how open they are to accepting it, is what would help you to not hesitate? What would help you to not hesitate? And again, if they have their blinders on and they think they didn't have all the facts, maybe they've even convinced themselves they didn't have all the facts when they clearly did, then they may say something like, well, if I had more facts, it would help me not hesitate, of course, because I never make rash decisions, because that's not what this company was founded on. Well, realize that either there's something you don't know, which is possible, or they're continuing to live in their delusional world. Now, that's never anything that you want to say to a client. Saying that you are continuing to live in your delusional world is not going to help them, and it's not going to help you. It's going to land you on the outside of the office within about 5 minutes, I'd say. So you want to make sure that you're saying things in an appropriate way. So when you ask the question, what would help you to not hesitate? Listen to what they're saying and respect the possibility that there are things, truths about themselves that they're really not ready for, really not ready to accept. Have you ever noticed that about people, that a lot of people can notice one thing about a person and the person won't even realize it? They will perhaps even hear it from a lot of people, but they just won't acknowledge it because, no, that can't be true. No, that doesn't make any sense. But yet it is. Everybody knows it except that person. Well, that's the way people are, and we all tend to be that way from time to time. We're not above it, I'm not above it, you're not above it, and your client's not above it. So realize that a lot of this has to do with respect. But at the same time you're doing all that respecting, you also need to make sure you're moving your client forward, because that's what you're there for. So you've got yourself a bit of a situation, don't you? On the one hand, you have to be nice to them and not get yourself fired. On the other hand, you have to get them moving forward. So there's going to have to be a little bit of confrontation, some sort of confrontation. And I suggest that you test the waters. I suggest that you test them very lightly. You stick your foot just barely in the water to see the temperature of it. So when you ask these questions, that's what you're doing. What would help you to not hesitate? You're going to get a lot of information about your client. Now, in many cases, because of the client's inability, or I shouldn't say inability, they have the ability, but they blocked that ability, or their lack of acceptance of the real truth, their inability to accept it, you're going to have to work around it. And that's a lot of what you're going to be doing as a life coach, working around it. If they saw it, if they would go for it, get the help they needed, they'd streamline the process. But many times they don't. They don't want to even admit it because of their ego. And that's fine. You'll have to work around it. So you want to encourage your clients to deal with hesitations as they occur in a productive way instead of after the event has taken place. Okay, if they're dealing with it afterwards, that really doesn't help. Opportunity came, opportunity left. Sure, we can deal with it, but what's there to say? We can talk about it over a beer if you want, but there's really not going to be any action taking place. The opportunity's gone. We can talk about the next time. You want to encourage your clients to deal with hesitations as they occur. That is when they need to deal with them. So point out to them, confront them to some degree, and point out, I noticed there was a little bit of holding back. You may not want to say hesitation. There's a little bit of holding back. And that's when these questions can come into play. What's causing you to hesitate? What would help you to not hesitate or hold back, however you want to say it? and then encourage them to deal with the hesitations as they occur. That's the only point at which any of this will be of any value to the client, is if the next time, or hopefully within the next few times, that it happens, they deal with it in the moment. That's where the payoff is. If someone's throwing a ball to you, you're playing catch, and every time they throw the ball to you, you stand there and you get hit by the ball in some part of your body, you're hesitating. You're hesitating to do something, and you're paying a price. Think about your clients that way. That's what's happening to them. They're getting hit, sometimes in the face, by the ball because they're hesitating to pick up their glove or to move their hands and catch the ball. Life would be so much easier if they would let go of hesitation, but they have their reasons. And sometimes their reasons aren't even clear to them. So you can cut through a lot of this by just training them to take action in the moment. Sometimes, despite the reasons that they actually have, you can still train a client. Yes, many times you'll be training clients. You can train them to take action in the moment. It's sort of like a muscle. You can train it to do something. You can train it to be effective. Their muscles, in this regard, may have atrophied due to lack of use. But sometimes, despite their deep psychological subconscious reason, you can still get them to take action by making it a process that's automatic. So make it fun and exciting for them. Get them used to rapid decision-making, making decisions in the moment, rather than hesitating and continuing to get hit by the ball each time. Let's talk about helping your clients when they feel confused. And this is part of confronting confusion. When your clients feel confused, they need you more than any other time, because it's a time for them that's potentially dark, potentially sad, potentially causes anxiety. They don't want to be in that situation. People don't like being confused. They need to reach out for you and know that you're going to be there. You want to help them when they feel confused. Realize that many times they're going to have, of course, deep psychological reasons for being confused. Sometimes there's a payoff for continuing to live in confusion, but that's when they need you. Whether they know it or not, that's when they need you. So when you see your client getting confused, hopefully before it goes to frustration, and hopefully before it leads to hesitation or procrastination, you intervene. You should be there for them. Look for this. You're going to see it all the time. You're going to see your clients constantly being confused. And when you see this, you can jump in. You can jump in with some sort of, not necessarily some sort of solution, but some sort of options. The great thing about being confused is that they will be open to possibilities. One of the hypnotic techniques that I really enjoy, that I've seen a lot, is used in street hypnosis. You actually confuse someone. You say, look over there, and get them a little bit off balance, and then you say, sleep. It sounds like something that wouldn't work, doesn't it? It sounds kind of hokey, like it wouldn't work. You say, look over there, and then sleep. But it does work. Why? Because you've got them off balance. And I'm in no way suggesting you do that technique with your clients, by the way. I'm just bringing up something from street hypnosis to show you just how open the human mind is when it's confused. When we're in a confused state, when someone says, look over there, and we look and we don't see anything, we're confused, the mind wants to know what to do next. The mind has to have somewhere to go. When you say sleep, you give it an automatic command. It's happy. It knows what to do. Okay, I'm going to sleep. I'm going to do something. Thank goodness there's something to do. When your client is confused, they want something to do. Their brain is reeling. It's like a computer just walking around in circles, malfunctioning, wondering what to do. You give it something to do. You give their brain, which is their computer, something to do. So when you present them with different options when they're confused, it's really a gift. It's a wonderful thing because they then will be able to make a choice. They want a path to go down when they're confused. Most people, when they're confused and they don't have options that they can see, will just turn away. They'll just say thanks, but no thanks. If someone makes an offer to you, they're trying to sell you something and you're confused, hopefully you'll walk away if you really don't understand the facts. That's what our subconscious minds are set for default. We'll walk away. So present them with options when they're confused. Encourage them to take a step back and determine what is causing the confusion. This can be wonderful. Now, this is a different approach than giving them options. You can give them options if you want them to move forward. If you want them to use it as a learning tool, then encourage them to take a step back and figure out what's causing the confusion, what's really causing the confusion. And of course, remember, the client will not always be honest with themselves or with you, so what they say is causing it may not actually be causing, but at least you will learn something about them. Hopefully, they will learn something. In many cases, this is a powerful tool because they get to step back, they get to see, okay, well, what's really causing it is, hopefully they're going to see, their hesitation to follow through or their fear or what have you, or the fact that they haven't gotten all their facts straight because they didn't want to get all their facts straight because they didn't want to be able to make a decision because they're afraid that they would fail. So sometimes it can go that deep. But whatever it is, if you have them step back, they're going to get distinctions. They're going to realize what's going on. And when they realize what's going on, guess what happens? The next time confusion comes around, it's a little easier to deal with. It's a little easier to push through. When something's easier to push through, then they are able to get on with the business of living. And this whole life coach concept really comes into play and they start making progress. And that's really what this is all about. So using that as a learning opportunity is a wonderful idea. If someone's confused and you're training them to just push through it, just make a decision, well, that's great if that works for them. But another way to approach it is to have them just step back and start putting the pieces together. Okay, you're confused right now, right? Right. What led to this? Well, I don't understand the facts. Why don't you understand the facts? Well, because I haven't read everything. Why haven't you read everything? Well, because the kids were here and I had to do this and this came up and that came up. Well, why did that come up? Why didn't you do it the week before when you had time? Well, I didn't. I don't know. I just didn't. Okay, so there you have something to work with. Now, that's very confrontational, and not every client's going to be up for that. But when they are, you can get a lot of mileage from that sort of courtroom type probing. If they are up for that and you are up for that, you can really help them tremendously because then they see it. They have nowhere else to run. They see that the week before they had all the time in the world. And whose fault is it they're confused? It's theirs. You're not trying to place blame. You're just trying to get through it so it won't stop them in the future. But sometimes placing a little bit of blame is at the heart of the matter. Getting your clients to take responsibility for their lives can be a bit of a challenge, but it can also produce tremendous results. You also want to ask, what will you gain and what will you lose? So, when a client feels confused, ask them, what will you gain and what will you lose in that situation? So let's say, for example, let's make this a specific situation. Let's say that we'll use our old example of a company merger. They're a client of yours who is a CEO of a corporation. They're about to acquire a company. Happening a lot, more and more. Big companies buying other big companies. You've been brought in there to help them as their life coach, and as part of the process, you are privileged to go through this process with them of acquiring this company. Comes right down to it, they are the decision maker. Let's say it's Sally. She's the decision maker. She's the CEO of this corporation. And she gets to the point where she's going to sign the paperwork or not, and she doesn't because she's confused. In that moment, you can have them take steps back. Have Sally take steps back. Encourage her to take those steps back, determine what's causing the confusion, and ask her, if you go through with this, what will you gain? If you go through with this, what will you lose? Now, in many cases where confusion is involved, especially for something big like this, where confusion is involved in many cases, they really don't know what they will gain, and they really don't know what they will lose. So if they're not certain about what's going on, then that's valid, at least in that moment. It's valid enough for them not to sign. If they're going to sign something and they don't understand it, that's really not a good idea. That's not something that you want to encourage them to push through. Because if they go ahead and buy this company and follow through with this, then negative things could happen. And if negative things happen, then of course it could negatively reflect on you. But a powerful question to ask in the moment is, what will you gain? What will you lose? And it lets them know what they don't know, or lets them know where the missing pieces are. And that can help them the next time.